Welcome to our first UPLEVEL of 2024 UPLEVEL webinar. And we're going to be talking today about building a global engagement ecosystem for customers and employees. And we're going to be highlighting Verizon. So excited to welcome everybody here. So what we're going to do today is really take a deep dive into the world of customer and employee engagement programs. At Verizon, and discover how they seamlessly intertwine to create a very powerful ecosystem. So whether you're part of an EBC program, part of an engagement program, or just interested in learning about Verizon's program overall, you are definitely in the right place today. The one thing I do want to highlight, and so pleased to share, is that Verizon was the recipient of several awards at the most recent Association of Briefing Program Managers conference in spring here in March. And among those awards, it was a World-Class Program Award, World-Class Awards in Analytics, Customer Experience, Management and Operations, as well as an award for innovation in the analytics category. So although Verizon has been a frequent winner of awards at Association of Briefing Program Managers conferences, they never stop innovating, and they're always looking at new ways to engage their audiences and create world-class experiences and always raise the bar. So I am Stacy Milligan. I am the Vice President of Strategic Marketing and Events for Nexus, and I'm so pleased to share this webinar with everybody, and so pleased to have the Verizon team with us today. And I would like to share our agenda. Let's see. So just a couple of housekeeping items. We want this to be interactive. I know it won't be a shy group, but we will be taking questions throughout the webinar. So in the moment, if you could utilize the Q&A feature on your Zoom panel, we will be monitoring Q&A throughout. And we're going to kick off. We're going to hear from Stacy Cummings. So she's going to give just an overview of Verizon's global customer and employee engagement program. And then we'll transition over to take a little bit deeper dive and hear from Jason Stevens, and he'll talk about their executive briefing program and also experiential programs. And then we'll transition to Denise Corbett to provide a spotlight on Verizon's customer engagement program. So, okay, and with that, I would like to introduce our panel. So first, I'm going to transition over to Stacy. Stacy Cummings is Senior Director of Customer and Employee Engagement at Verizon and their fearless leader. Stacy, I'll transition over to you if you could provide an overview of yourself and your role.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having us today on the webinar. We're excited to be here and share a little bit about our programs. As you said, I'm Senior Director of Customer Programs, and we're going to talk through what those customer programs entail, but it's basically everything from trade shows down to the EBC program and everything in between. I've been a part of this business for many, many years, but my background was in communications, so very different than the marketing spot that I have right now. But all the skills amassed over the years work really well into the programs that we have and execute on every day.
Great, thank you. We're excited to hear about all of that. All right, Jason, over to you. Jason is the Associate Director of Executive Briefing and Experiential Programs at Verizon. So Jason, if you could introduce yourself and provide an overview of your role.
Yeah, sure. So yes, as you mentioned, Jason Stevens on Stacy's team. I manage our executive briefing program as well as experiential program. I've had a variety of different technical operation roles within Verizon, supporting, both on the network side and a portfolio side for Verizon as relates to business engagement with our customers. I guess 20 plus years with Verizon all in. So happy to be here and happy to share.
Great. Thank you, Jason. And then Denise Corbett is the Associate Director of Customer and Employee Programs. So Denise, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure, Stacy, thanks so much. Yes, Denise Corbett. I am a part of Stacy Cummings' organization. I've been with Verizon for 24 years yesterday, actually. I went to school to be a high school history teacher and have found myself here. My team is responsible for customer and employee programs. Today, I'm going to talk about our advisory program, but we also are responsible for the Verizon Business Corporate Kickoff, the roadshows we do at the beginning of the year, and then also, ways that we show up at events like Mobile World Congress, Barcelona, Vegas, CES, specifically how Verizon Business shows up in that space.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so before we kick off, we have a poll for everybody. So let's see, we're going to jump over to that. All right, give me just a moment to pull that up. All right. All right, give me just a moment. Okay, I'm actually having some challenges here. All right, why don't we, while I figure that out, Stacy, why don't we transition over to you? And
Okay.
I will pull up the slide, your slide for your portion.
Perfect. And we can go to the poll whenever.
Okay, right. I will figure that out on the back end. So let's see. Okay.
It is live event. This is what we
Live, right?
face,
Everybody should be
every
familiar with
time.
this.
Yes, without a doubt.
Okay, and again, let's see. Apologies for this. In case anybody doesn't know, this is the first time that I have been doing a webinar here. So learn as we go.
It's all good. We keep switching our webinar formats, so that makes it even even more difficult when you're in a new format. I'm happy to get started, Stacy, and then when
Yeah,
it
why
pops
don't you,
up,
Stacy?
okay. All right. So I'm going to talk through a little bit about the programs that we have. And I know I mentioned, trade shows to EBCs and everything in between. So those things in between include things like sales sponsorships, which is when one of our customers has their own trade show and we participate in that. It also includes webinars. We have a full robust program around webinars, customer and partner events. So those would be events that we participate in that our larger customers or partners execute or ours. So the primary event for that is our innovation sessions, which are our only owned event that, a large scale event that Verizon executes and puts on ourselves. We have suites and tickets and global hospitality. So that's what I consider an opportunity to have a different conversation with your customer in a different environment. It's not at an EBC. It's not at a CAB. It's not at a trade show. It's a totally different experience for the customer and the leaders that are in attendance at those types of events. Covers everything from our partners with the NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, down to our executed events at things like Masters, the Kentucky Derby. We did an event at the Sphere with the U2 concert, so things like that. The advisory program that Denise is going to share a little bit more about, and then the briefing program that Jason will share more about. And those events, if and when we get the slide, it's a funnel. So, it's wider at the top, narrower at the bottom, and that's purposeful because when we're looking at the customers that we hit at that wide top part, those trade shows, those sales sponsorships, the webinars, those are people we don't have relationships with. Those are people that we are looking at becoming new customers. Those are people that we're trying to educate on the solutions and services that Verizon has. So wide net. But as we drive that down further into that hospitality, into the cabs, into the EBCs, we've got relationships with those customers. Our sales teams talk to those customers on a regular basis. They're, first name basis with them. And we treat those differently. We look at them differently. And those customers, Denise and I were on a call yesterday on metrics, and we talked about how those customers are never, ever making it into a traditional marketing campaign because we already own those types of relationships and we don't want that for them. But the folks at the top, that's how we're going to draw them in. That's how we're going to get their attention. And that's how we're going to drive them down that funnel to be able to come to an EBC, to be a part of a CAB. That's our ultimate goal. That's what we want to do with those customers is drive that relationship through the funnel. that owned event that I mentioned, the innovation sessions, that sits in the middle of our funnel. And that is kind of a hybrid or a, goes both ways event. We do cast a wide net to invite people to that event. We've got one on June 5th in New York City. If anybody's based there, you're welcome to join us. It'll be at Radio City Music Hall. But that is a opportunity to, cast a wide net in the area where we're going to do that event and get some new customers in, get to see our solutions. Maybe they are a customer, but they didn't realize the breadth and depth of the solutions we offer. So we've got that, but then on the other side, we have customers that are invited, picked by hand by their account team and met there with their account team to have a meeting. So it gives us kind of the both sides there, and it sits in the middle of that relationship structure. So all pieces are extremely important in that funnel. They all serve a purpose, and it allows us to meet our customers where they are in their particular journey, where we are in our relationship with them. As Denise mentioned, the leadership meetings, the kickoffs, things like that, this team is also responsible for all of that activity. So any type of internal communications, our recognition events, our leadership events that happen throughout the year. So we build great relationships with our leadership in those environments. That gives us a little bit of a different play, so that when we do want them to come to one of these customer facing events, it's an easy ask because we know them and we work with them personally on a regular basis. So it's kind of an advantage. It's more work. I'm not saying it's not, but it's an advantage to us for the other work that we do. And then the other piece that Jason's going to dive a little bit deeper into is experiential. So while we partner across the board, product development, product marketing, our tech solutions team, Jason still is activating at all of our events. So when we've got demos in an EBC, when we've got demos at a trade show, when we have demos at a CAB, Jason's team is responsible for that. So again, an advantage to have that responsibility on our team because we can feed it through all of the other programs that we have. And the goal really is through all of these programs to take the feedback and take the information we get from customers at these events and feed it back in this continuous feedback loop that we've got. Because what we learn in a CAB and what we learn in an EBC as to what these customers need and want is going to influence what we are going to have at our trade shows next year or what webinars we might speak on. So it all plays a role, and it's all part of this, larger funnel that we use. It's, similar to a sales funnel that the sales team uses on a regular basis, but it's our activity funnel. It's our program funnel that allows us to, again, meet those customers where they are.
Fantastic. And I apologize. I've been having some content sharing issues. But could you share just a little bit about how you capture that feedback across all those venues, and how do you consolidate it? And then how do you share it back out? In what format? Is that a tool? Do you have dedicated, folks on your team that do that?
I did, and I wish I still do, but I don't now. But we do, each is a little bit different. Obviously, when we get feedback from a trade show, that's a very different type of feedback than we get from Denise's CABs. So, it depends on how we get that information, but we use the sales ops team as a pathway to get back to sales for their information, just from trade shows, because they actually attend trade shows with us and track the meetings and track the content to be able to get back to the sales teams on that type of activity. But for the CAB program, Denise and team do an extensive, we call it a packet post event that includes every bit of data and information that a customer may have said, done, participated in, every bit of it. So that is shared back with the account teams, that is shared back with product, that is shared back with our tech team. So everybody has the opportunity to, learn from that piece of it. EBCs, obviously we've got surveys, the same type of surveys that I think most programs have. That same information is fed back to the account teams, fed back to those same teams, the product, the technology teams, for any feedback that may affect them. I wish I could say it was automated and in a better way, but we just do our best to get it back to who we think are the stakeholders for the content.
Well, that's amazing. I know that is something I think that, every program is always striving to do. I know when I was running programs, that was one of the things that I was always looking to do is what's that format? Is it, I know there's challenges with recording conversations or recording that voice of the customer. So how do you capture, for example, in an EBC, that feedback? And again, just all that rich content that you hear from our customers directly at CABS as well. So kudos to you for figuring that out and actually, moving forward with that and actually using that content and all that feedback that you do get.
And the content is the other part, the fact that if it gets created for one program, it's going to get shared in another. So, we have a hospitality program where one of our leaders is presenting to the customers. We have a small business session. So Denise provided content from one of her programs for that. So we're able to do that kind of thing where if we've created content for one space, we're able to share it across and get it into some of these other opportunities.
And then do you have, I guess, a common content repository that's accessed by all? Do you have some gatekeeping on that so people can't just go in and keep changing their content,
Yes.
the standards
Yes.
around that?
Yeah, well, the EBC team, we're a Google house, so most things are housed in Google. Each team has their own, Google drives where they keep their content, and there is no access to anybody outside of our teams for that content. And the EBC team has specific, Google drives per EBC where that content is shared. We do not share. Very rarely, I won't say we don't, very rarely do we share EBC content because that's content that was created for a specific customer, so that's a little bit different. What Denise shared is a broader, kind of overview of Verizon and where we are currently from, a strategic perspective. So that type of content may fit in other places for different customers, if that makes sense. But no, there's no big housing unit.
Again, I think that's something that a lot of programs are always super curious about. That's always a key discussion point on how do you manage content, and then also just I think one thing that had always come up in several conversations is, are there master decks, and are those well,
we do have
one person?
Yeah, Verizon has something called the gold standard deck that has been produced by marketing, and it is the baseline of where we start for a lot of presentations. It's got what we want to share with customers on all of our solutions. So that is baseline of where we might start for all of our presentations, but generally we are not presenting the gold standard deck just as is. Mm-hmm. But you reminded me in order to get to some of the pieces of the content, we do have within Briefing Edge and with our own homegrown dashboard, you're able to pull a topic by speaker. So pull a speaker by topic, either way, it goes both ways. So from that, you definitely could then, go to that speaker and get some content based on the particular topic you're looking for. Because we do house that.
Okay. And then a few more questions. Could you elaborate a bit on your team and maybe, how they're structured and just kind of some high level numbers about just the numbers and, maybe by program? Yeah,
absolutely. So the team, we have around 40 folks on the team, and they are structured by program. So, Jason got the EBCs and the experiential, that those folks report to him. Denise has customer programs. And as she said, that's CABS plus, other programs that we do, through the larger, what we call tier 1 shows. She also, again, is responsible for the internal events that we've talked about. So she's got that team. We have another team that's considered a demand gen team. That team does have trade shows, webinars, those innovation sessions, things that are broader demand gen focused. We have a hospitality team that is dedicated to hospitality events. We have another team that is focused on our business markets type events. So the majority of what Denise focuses on, the majority of what Jason focuses on is enterprise and public sector. So those are our larger customers, but we also have a business markets business unit that we support. So we have another team that's dedicated to their types of activity. And then we have a separate team that's dedicated to public sector type activity, mostly trade shows in that world. Given that, public sector, you cannot host them. They can't come, anywhere. You can't do hospitality with them. So we do a ton of shows, in that tiering that I mentioned, from a high tier to a low tier of participation with them to build those relationships. I have a team that is dedicated to the hospitality side of our events. So they're booking the hotels for leadership meetings. They're doing all the, on-site management, the registration for those things, also for our cabs. So they're doing, while Denise focuses on all the content and strategy, that team is focusing on how we can execute at the particular location where we are. And then lastly, I do have a content strategist on the team who kind of is somebody who collects all of the information that's coming out from our CMO team, what's feeding us, as far as directionally logos and campaigns and things like that, that then support this team. She's also responsible for all the writing on the team, and she writes all the webinars and things like that. So she's a single team member. But that,
Valuable.
I think I covered the whole team. Did I miss anybody, guys? Okay. So and I will say though, I one of the things that we strive and are proud of is that we do a lot of swapping. It doesn't matter if you sit on Denise's team, you might support EBCs. If that's where the need is, and you've got bandwidth, you're going to go over there and support EBCs. If you sit on the trade show team and you don't currently have a trade show, well, then you're going to go over and support that public sector team because they've got a lot going on. So we do a lot of cross-functional training on our team to make sure that people are capable of doing the roles of other people.
That's a great model just for scalability, but also for career development as well.
Yes.
Yep. Sounds like always plenty of opportunity. All right. And then one final question for you, Stacy. How are you measured, and what types of metrics and ROI do you do? Is it dashboards and everything from frequency? Who do you roll all of that information up to, and how have you seen, those metrics work effectively for you in terms of getting resources and all that?
Yeah. Everybody wants the data all the time. So we're measured a variety of ways. Quantity, of course, of all of our programs and what we're doing and what that looks like. But it's more return. That's what the ask is, what is the ROI? And we've been doing a lot of work. We shifted teams in February of this year. And our new SVP that I report to is, he's a data guy. That's where he came from. And so he's excited about being able to better quantify the events and showcase them. We do a lot of work back with our sales operations teams. We have a couple of different dashboards that we use. We did win an award for our win reason report, which is one of our new reports that we do, which gives direct attribution to an event on a closed opportunity. So that's a new way that we report back to our leadership and say, hey, the EBC, the cabs, this hospitality event directly affected this particular win. So we do 30, 60, 30 days post and 60 days post, looking at opportunities, new ones and ones that have closed. That's one of our key pieces that we look at. We look at revenue that's come through the programs. We look at types of customers, where they've been, like how many events have they attended across the board? How do they engage? And we feed that information back through, we sit in marketing. So it feeds back up through marketing, but it also feeds back up through sales. All the sales leaders get reporting on a quarterly basis that tells them this. They are measured on their EBCs. They have a quota. So they have to deliver on that quota, and they're measured on that. And that's reported weekly. I report that out weekly in a report that we send out, that they are compared against their peers. They see exactly how many, EBCs they've done versus what their peers have done.
I bet that's effective. So you have a constant funnel of EBCs, I'm quite sure.
We do. We do.
So then, I mean, given that, it sounds like you do have a pretty, like I said, robust funnel, but do you ever use some of those metrics in terms of looking at, you know, is there an opportune time? Do you make recommendations to those folks that do have those quotas that, hey, this is a great time, you know, based on what we're seeing in your account and all the, you know, how they've been progressing through the funnel of all the different marketing activities? Do you ever do proactive outreach in that way?
We do. We meet with like I said, I meet quarterly with the sales leaders, but the team meets with all of the sales directors on a regular basis. I would say, you know, biweekly or monthly with them on where they are, what they could be doing, which customers haven't come in, because with the way that we're segmented, our top 2 segments identify customers that they want to come through. The bottom 2, they're too big. They can't really, I mean, they can't identify a group, but it's, you know, they're going to see more and different type activity. So yes, because we meet with them on such a regular basis, either myself or the team, we're able to make those recommendations to them based on where they are. And hey, you know, like in Denise's programs and in the hospitality programs, at the end in the survey, they're all asked, you know, would you like to come in for an EBC? So when that, you know, as soon as that's triggered, it goes right back to the sales team, and that EBC is then, you know, commenced based on the feedback from the particular event.
Okay, I'm just out of curiosity, what is your lead time for an EBC request?
What do we ask for, or what do we get?
That is a very valid point. I think everyone can relate to.
Yeah. Ask is 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, that's what we push. I'd say we get 4, sometimes 6, but you know, 4. And then there's many that come through, you know, that don't get EBC support because, you know, it's too short.
Okay, absolutely. Okay. All right, I'm looking at Q&A before we transition over to Jason. I know we did have a few questions there. Oh, okay. All right.
All right.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Stacy. Jason, I would like to pass it over to you. I think everyone wants to hear all about the executive briefing program, connecting the dots, dive in with a little bit more detail, and as well as the experiential program. So I will pass it over to you.
Yeah, sure. No, thank you very much. So yeah, obviously I kind of serve a dual role within the organization, managing the executive briefing program and the experiential activity. But that's actually been very beneficial for what we look to do as part of a briefing organization and the various facilities that we manage as part of our EBCs and innovation labs. So, but as Stacy mentioned, you know, as you think through that event funnel that she was describing, the briefing program really sits at the bottom of that funnel, right? So as leads and customer touch points are being generated through trade shows, through webinars, through the cabs, through all the various customer programs that we manage, the end goal is to really get to a more intimate one-to-one engagement with our customers as part of an executive briefing. So the executive briefing program and how we really define the briefing is really a highly curated, personalized engagement where we're getting Verizon leadership and Verizon decision makers in the room with our customers, decision makers, all for the purposes of obviously strengthening our existing relationships, developing new relationships, growing opportunities through innovation and collaboration. So that's kind of the way we look at it as we think about briefings for us. It is quality, not quantity, as we focus at a program level. So these are not customer meetings. They're not QBRs. These are highly curated engagements that are managed through the executive briefing program with the various briefing managers that we have on staff, working with those account teams, working with those stakeholder teams. As Stacy mentioned, we prefer 6 to 8 weeks. Sometimes we're lucky enough to get it. Sometimes we're not. But that's also to ensure, a reasonable level of participation within our briefings, right? Because I think as all folks on this call can recognize, everyone's extremely busy. Our leadership's busy. Our subject matter experts are busy. Our customers are busy. So sometimes we really just need that time to ensure we can lock in schedules and lock in dates and lock in availability of certain folks as part of those engagements. But when we think about the briefing program that we manage, as Stacy mentioned earlier, we're predominantly focused on enterprise and public sector. and that would be representative of both SLED and Fed accounts within our public sector practice. And so from that standpoint, we target about 750 briefings annually. And again, that's where we're focusing more on quality, not quantity. And that's obviously being shared across all those various sales segments as part of that engagement model. So as far as from that standpoint, when we think about our EBC practice at large, we manage 6 flagship centers. 3 of those are managed within the VBG organization that Stacy and I have ownership and responsibility for managing. That would be Basking Ridge at corporate headquarters, Ashburn, Virginia, which is just outside Washington, D.C., where we manage a large portion of our public sector engagements. And then London, which is focused on our multinational corporation customers and EMEA customers. In addition to those 3, we also help co-manage our innovation labs with the global network team. So we have 3 innovation labs in Boston, San Francisco, and LA. Those are owned and operated by our global network team and TPD organization, but we have personnel embedded in those facilities that are dedicated for managing the actual executive briefings that are hosted there as it relates to our business customers. In addition to that, we manage a variety of off-site briefings. That could be at a customer location, it could be a partner location, or it could be another Verizon location that's not one of our managed centers. And since COVID, obviously, we have moved more toward trying to get back to face-to-face engagements with customers, which we think is obviously the best way to communicate and build relationships. But we do still support virtual briefings as well, depending on just the circumstance or the availability of customers. Sometimes it's just easier to get together for a virtual session. And we will, to Stacy's point earlier, meet customers where they want to meet. So if they don't feel like coming to Verizon, we'll come to them. If they feel like staying in a virtual world, we'll stay in a virtual world. But we are focused as an organization to drive as much briefing activity into our facilities as possible, because that's where we're best situated to support those engagements. That's where we're best situated to demonstrate our products and solutions, and our capabilities as an organization is bringing people into those environments. As far as the briefing team itself, as Stacy mentioned, she's got a fairly large team. About 12 or so people are dedicated specifically for the briefing program. That's a representation of our EBC managers, briefing coordinators, technical managers that manage a lot of different innovation showcases. But where we find our greatest level of success as an organization within the briefing program is really taking advantage of the talent and the expertise and the resources that Verizon has elsewhere in the business. So as Stacy mentioned, we partner very closely with our product organization, solution architect community, domain teams, various folks within our network operations teams or other internal business practices, so we can bring the right level of expertise into some of these engagements. We do not staff technical presenters as part of the organization within the briefing program. We rely on the technical capabilities of the company at large and the expertise at large. We do have technical operation managers that are responsible for our facilities and responsible for maintaining the experiential environments and the network infrastructure and the technical infrastructure that we operate the centers on. And they will conduct experiential tours, and they are more than capable of representing pretty much any product in our portfolio, at least at an educational level. But then that's when we'll bring in that expertise to go a bit deeper with customers. One other thing I'll just tout, we've been very fortunate with having a strong level of executive support throughout the briefing program, and really Stacy's programs at large, all the way up to senior leadership. And I think that has benefited us immensely as an organization in securing funding, securing resources, securing things that we need, either a bespoke ask or something that is just lights on type operations that we might need something. So that's been very fortunate for us, and I think that's helped drive a lot of activity within the briefing program as well, when we think about encouraging sales and then sales funnel as far as getting people into the EBCs. So that's on the briefing program. And then the other half of my organization or team is focused in on the experiential. So we do maintain innovation showcases across all of our various facilities, both the EBCs and innovation labs. We have a standard practice of build once and then deploy multiple locations, right? So we work very closely with the product organization that if we design, build a demonstration, we design, build that demonstration for max value for Verizon. That, to Stacy's point earlier, we may build something on a new capability or a new part of our portfolio, and it could show up at a trade show, or it could be brought into the EBCs, or it could be, used at a customer advisory board meeting or wherever it might be. And the reason we do that, one, it helps us standardize resources and standardize, the technical capabilities that we need. But it also ensures greater continuity in how customers are educated on our portfolio. So regardless of whether a customer visits Boston or visits Basking Ridge or goes to a trade show in Las Vegas, they're being exposed to that solution. They're being exposed to that technology in a similar manner. It may be a different presenter. The talk track may differ slightly, but you're ensuring that we're representing that product in a unified manner, if that makes sense. So as part of that experiential program, obviously it's kind of home-based within the briefing organization, but as I mentioned, my team will support Denise Corbett's team for, experiential and innovation showcases at the customer advisory board meetings. My team travels frequently to the different industry trade shows that we support. Whether that be, NAB, we were recently at NAB, National Association of Broadcasters, RSA, we were at NRF earlier this year, pretty much all the major industry trade shows Verizon participates in. And that also benefits us as an organization because that also gets us closer to a different type of audience. So as we are talking about our portfolio and our services, we don't just develop tunnel vision within the briefing program and just speaking, on these one-to-one engagements. We're able to kind of capture feedback and capture understandings and learnings from broader audiences, whether that be in the CAB program or trade show program or the innovation sessions. So I kind of shared a lot there, but I think I saw some questions come in, and Stacy, you may have some questions as well. I'd be happy to answer.
Yes, actually, some of them have been answered, but I think it's just good to share with the group in case others haven't been monitoring or seeing the Q&A. So one question was, what titles or personas do you strive for your EBC attendees?
Yeah, I mean, for the briefing program, we are focused at the decision maker or influencer level, right? We do require C-level or senior level decision maker participation in our briefings, and that's on both sides. So that's to ensure that both Verizon is coming with the right level of decision maker, as well as on the customer side. Do we get it every time? Maybe not every single time, but majority of the time, that is the goal. But that's what we're focused on. As Stacy mentioned earlier, the other programs will then certainly touch some of those broader segments of personas, right? When you get into end users and other folks within the organization, but we're predominantly focused.
Okay, thank you. Are most or all of your presenters, excuse me, required to be there in person? No, Stacy, it looks like you're shaking your head, maybe. Oh, can't hear you. I think
Oh,
you're on
sorry, I was on mute. Looks like Jason froze. No, they are not required. They are strongly encouraged to be there in person. But we will take a, subject matter expert. If they are not able to attend, we'll bring them in virtually.
Okay, great. One other question that had been asked, I know it was answered, but again, just kind of bringing it up for the whole group here. What are some of the components that allow you to attribute specific metrics directly to an EBC? So of the 100 EBCs, you can tie 10 towards deal closures.
Right. So as I typed these answers, so hopefully, when others answer them, they answer the same way I did. But, as I mentioned, that win reason report is a direct attribution. So we're able to go into that report and look at it on a, monthly, quarterly basis and say exactly how many deals were attributed to the EBC program or to the CAB program or to hospitality. And then from that, we can pull what that deal was, what was the size, what type of opportunity was it, what it was the revenue. So we're able to take that information directly, and that's a Salesforce pull, but a separate dashboard that's been created.
Okay. Great.
So the 30, 60 things that I talked about, looking at the opportunities that were created 30 days post-event and opportunities closed that were 60 days post-event, obviously that's an influence. That is not an attribution. We participated in some form of activity with that customer. Now, did they meet with the account team? 5 times during that time? Did they also attend a cab? Did they also, go to an event? All of those things attribute it to the win. So that's an influence, not an attribution. When we look at that particular kind of data, the other data is direct attribution. That's the sales team saying, this is what, helped me seal the deal.
Okay. And then do you do weighted attribution in Salesforce? So say you might weight an EBC experience, which is, a higher touch engagement versus maybe just someone coming by in a trade show.
Well, I would say the more, as I mentioned in that funnel, that it's only the bottom of the funnel that's got the opportunity for attribution. So things like trade shows and webinars don't have an opportunity for a closed won opportunity. They may have a influence for a created opportunity, but it's not the closed won attribution.
Got it. Okay. And then discussion leaders. Do you have a recognition program for them? Are they able to leverage any of the hospitality events that you do with the sales teams? Do you have anything in place for them?
I'm sorry, I missed that. What
For your discussion leaders? So the folks
so
that
yes, we have a huge program actually for our discussion leaders that we love. And it's, as I talk about it, it is my favorite day of the year when I send out the notes, because the notes that I get back from these folks, they're just so happy. But so we have a program, it's a distinguished discussion leader award. They become a member of that group. It is across all of those programs that I talked about. So each team has the opportunity to nominate the discussion leaders that really push their programs forward in the year. They receive a note from me, which isn't so special, but it does copy their leadership so that their leadership is aware. They receive a badge on our internal, we call it eWeb, but it's where you can look up another employee. So they receive a badge on there that says that they are a distinguished discussion leader, and they get some nice gift from us, not anything special, but a gift to commemorate it. And when I tell you the notes that I get back from people, they are overwhelmed, so happy, and the notes actually get forwarded and flipped to, they've been forwarded and flipped all the way up to our president. When somebody is recognized and their leadership sees it, they forward it to their leadership, they forward it to their leadership, and it rolls. So we love the program, and I feel like we've had it for about 8 years now. It started in the EBC program and then it expanded to the other programs. So
Wonderful.
We don't give them tickets because there is no employee usage of our hospitality or tickets. We used to have a program where you could, if there were tickets unused, you could, ask for them or you could request them, but that program got eliminated. So no employee usage of any of the fun stuff.
Okay, great. Just looking at questions again. I think we are all good. All right, looking at time, I wanted to make sure that Denise has enough time to talk about those customer advisory boards. I know that's always a hot topic as well with this community. So Denise, pass it over to you.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much. And just for reference, Jason and I did not have slides to share. So you're not missing any excellent slide where we were just going with straight discussion approach today. Okay. So yeah, my team has responsibility for quite a few things, but today we'll talk about the advisory board program. Currently, we're running 7 programs separately, and we organize our programs by region, by industry, or by job title. We refer to it as a program because we don't consider an advisory board meeting a one and done effort, right? We look for, from a recruiting perspective, we want these folks to commit to be with us for 12 to 18 months. And we want to have several touch points with them along the way. So from a program perspective, we look to engage with them right from the get-go with the onboarding process, right? We're looking to do a one-to-one interview. We also do a sort of registration or pre-onboarding survey where we're asking them the types of things they want to talk about, who are the leaders that they want to meet with, et cetera. And so we're building virtual events based on feedback that they give us and topics that they want to talk about. Obviously, we have our in-person experience. I'll talk about that separately. And then we look to companion events. So I think Stacy mentioned the innovation sessions, which is a team-owned event. So the program managers on my team manage their CAB members quite closely, right? To make sure that they're getting to take full advantage of everything that we would have to offer them. The in-person experience, you know, we work really hard to make that a special experience. We know that if we're asking C-levels from some of the top firms in the world to come spend 2 days with us, it better be very nice. It better be a great location, a very nice hotel. We do not pay for customers' travel. We do cover once they get on the ground, but from an ethics perspective, we don't, you know, pay for airfare or anything like that. So we know that we have to have a really kind of compelling location, but also a compelling agenda. And when we think about that agenda build, right, thankfully, we aren't doing that from scratch. We're doing that based on feedback that we've gotten from them in the pre-event surveys, the one-to-one interviews, and then also potentially some one-to-ones that they've had with some of the executive sponsors of our program. We do look to build the agendas in a way that gives our customers some insight to what the big Verizon is doing, right? Verizon Business is a component of Verizon, and our customers are quite keen to understand the overall Verizon business. How are we performing? What is our strategy? Where are we investing? All of our advisory board members are under NDA. So we work very hard to be as open and transparent with them as possible. And then from there, we really look to build out sessions in that agenda that meet the needs of our community and talk about things that are important to them. And we also look to have customers as part of almost all of our agenda sessions. These folks want to hear from each other just as much as they want to hear from us, if not more, right? So I've done this job, I think, coming up on 10 years. And so I feel confident when I say that people come to CABS, I think, for 3 reasons. They want to network with each other in a non-competitive environment. They want access to the top leader. So Jason mentioned in his program, if we're going to invite a VP or a C-level, we need to show up with our C-levels, right? Like we have to bring the same type of role and influence to the table as our customers are. And then they want some insight and the opportunity to influence our roadmap. So those things are quite primary and centered for us as we're building out these agendas. We obviously try to do some sort of nice dinner experience, a guest speaker, there's gifting. I do try to locate my programs where I can leverage Jason's centers, right? Where I can take customers to see all the good work that his team is doing. But when I'm not that fortunate, very lucky because Jason is such a great work partner. He will bring that experience to a hotel ballroom for me. Certainly not cost effective, but we will do that if that's kind of where we're at. I know that there were some questions that were kind of targeted to CAB, so I'll just take a look at those quickly. How do you value them? How do you measure the value of your CAB and what are the metrics captured? Such a good question because an in-person advisory board experience is very, very expensive. And when you are looking to measure that value or the return on that investment, you really have to make sure that you are recruiting and curating a CAB community that has some of your top tier accounts, but also some accounts where we have a lot of opportunity, right? We're in marketing, but we always raise our hand to say, are you in sales, right? We all get that question. Yes, we understand that we need to sell things, but the team works really hard to protect the integrity of our advisory board and not make that a true selling opportunity, right? These leaders can sniff that out in a minute and it feels like a bit like a bait and switch. So it's a really hard question to answer here on this webinar, and it's a hard question for me to answer when I'm sitting in front of Stacy and all of the other leaders. But I would say, typically, can you afford not to? Can you afford not to host your top tier customers in this way? Can you afford to not get that feedback as you're looking to continue product development, innovation, and potentially entering into new markets with products and services? I think another question was around recruiting. So let me just check and see. What does recruitment look like for CABS? Is there a criteria? There isn't necessarily a criteria by account, right? I've worked really hard over the last few years to protect The seats, right, in a cab, right, the membership in a cab should be somewhat sort of elite feeling. But it isn't just for our best top accounts. I don't want a bunch of people in there who are just going to say we're great, because we're not always great. We don't always have a good day. We don't always do things perfectly, and we need that feedback to improve. So oftentimes, especially if I've organized a board that is around a particular product or solution, therefore also a job title, I would like the teams to be including some greenfield accounts for us, because say security, right? If they're not buying security from us, they're buying it from someone, and they have an experience as a security customer, and they know what they need in that environment. So we're happy to take any feedback on what they're seeing in the marketplace that works well for them, and what isn't working well for them. And I think it gives us an opportunity to improve. From a title perspective, we typically are targeting C-levels, but when you think about the different industries, everybody at a bank is a VP, and there seems to be no C-levels in the energy and utility space. So, they title themselves differently by industry. And so we've learned to understand the nuances of some of those, and we adjust as need be. We do have some waiting lists for our programs. We don't just take anyone and everyone, because if we do that, it dulls and lessens the experience for the members that we have. So some of our programs are on a waiting list, which is kind of a nice feeling to have. And then I think maybe one of the last questions for me, value, recruitment, how many members? Yes, so from a membership perspective, I'm typically looking for 20 to 25 confirmed members of a program. So if you refer back to my earlier comments on what a program means, an in-person is only a part. So not every date works for everybody. So when you have kind of a fuller roster of 20 to 25, when you go to have a virtual meeting, you do have that solid group of 10 or 12. When you go to have your in-person meeting, you're typically closer to the 14, 16. And these are meant to be smaller group discussions. We've all been in those meetings where there's too many people in there and someone says, no, we really want your honest feedback. Well, no, thank you. There's 50 people in here. I'm not doing that. So we work really hard to keep our numbers for the in-persons down closer to 14 to 16. And then it's a real battle to make sure that Verizon doesn't overpopulate that room. Verizon tends to operate with a bias to yes. Probably if you polled some of my coworkers, I tend to operate with a bias to maybe not. Because we kind of have to protect what we're doing. I don't typically share my material outside of Stacy's program, again, because a lot of my content is protected by NDA. We vet every single nomination for a customer advisory board member, all the way up to a VP level has to approve if those folks can be invited. And yes, Jason and I work super close together. That's probably more lucky for me than it is for Jason. But when you think about the distinctions between our programs, Jason's team is working in a one-to-one model, meaning their briefing is for typically one customer. Now they might have several roles from that account, right, sitting in that room. So they're a one-to-one, and I would consider the programs that my team does in the advisory board a one-to-few, because I'm looking to have anywhere, again, from 20 to 25 different firms, organizations, right, enterprises as a part of my group. So hopefully that helped and answered. On the other side, what are the areas that you tend to overlap and collaborate most? Well, certainly anything experiential. If it has to plug in where we go, I'm not the one. Jason is the one to make sure that all of those things work smoothly and that somebody says something really smart and intelligent and relevant about them. But we do overlap by way of, I think Stacy mentioned at the beginning, right? His team did a briefing with a very key member of one of my customer advisory board programs. So I worked closely with that briefing manager to make sure that I understood what that session was going to be like. I worked to get a note to that customer to say, I'm sorry that you couldn't join us for our cab. I hope that that briefing was successful, and we hope to see you in September, right? So Stacy has always made it a priority for the team that we show up as one, that we look like we know what the others are doing. So we work hard to do that. And then I would just, I guess, last comment before we go to Q&A from a cross-function perspective, that is really, really important for the program managers on my team. They go out and they work trade shows. right? Because I want them to hear from customers. I want them to know what customers are asking about in that environment. I work trade shows. I worked the booth at RSA last week. I am working a breakout at the innovation session in a couple weeks because it's a huge event. It's a busy time. And turns out my name was on the top of the list to do that. So I will be in New York. And if any of you are in that area, we'd love to see you. But the cross-functional part of our work is so important because it just makes us better at what our, sort of original task is.
Fantastic. I don't know if you mentioned this, but Denise, for your CAB members, is it just an annual, or are they on the CAB and invited back to subsequent CABs annually, or a time period?
They're typically, I mean, there's one, which I would never say here because Stacy would kill me, but I can only think of one person who has never been invited back to a CAB. We just sunset a product-specific CAB that was 3.5 years. And we had members the whole time actively engage. We keep a scorecard for our CAB members. Did they do their one-to-one interview? Did they have a one-to-one with a leader? Did they sit in the in-person? Did they attend a virtual? Have they gone to a companion event? That's not because we're scoring their level of engagement, but we're really scoring ourselves to make sure that we're giving them the proper opportunity to engage with Verizon as they would expect.
And those folks, while we sunset that CAB because of a restructuring, those folks were then fed into other CABs. So
Yes.
they remain in the program, just not in that particular CAB.
And are they able to swap out? So say one person, maybe leaves the company or moves on to another role within their company. Would someone from that company that had been previously attending the CAB be able to add someone, or would that have to go through a nomination process again through your group?
It would likely go through a vetting process, only because we want to make sure that folks are sitting with like folks, right? We want to make sure that we have the right titles, the right level of influence. It's not necessarily so much this is a C-level and you're just a VP or you're just a senior director. But if you're not doing the same kind of work or making the same kind of decisions, your ability to contribute to those conversations is different. There's a place and time for that, but it isn't always at an advisory board setting.
But we have seen often, if a CIO moves to another company, he or she is often then included in their new company because we've got that baseline relationship with them. And so new customer, from the new company.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I want to be mindful of time. We have 3 minutes left in our time together. So any questions, again, you can put them in the Q&A and we will take a look at those and bring them up to the entire group. And for the Verizon team, any final comments?
No, I hope this was helpful. And, we're certainly open if you want to reach out to us and, connect. I got to connect on LinkedIn while we were here. So, we're open to helping across the board. I mean, obviously ABPM is what brought us here and brought us all together. So they are, all about that sharing and being able to support across the board. So we're happy to do that.
Well, great. Well, Stacy, Jason, Denise, thank you so much for your time, for sharing so much about your program. It's impressive. I know I learned a ton. It's very exciting. And I'm sure you'll probably get a lot more LinkedIn requests from this group. And for all the attendees, thank you for your time. And we will be sending out this recording, so you're welcome to share it with your peers. And then always stay tuned and stay up to date by joining the Nexus LinkedIn page, and we'll keep you informed and updated about upcoming UPLEVEL events. So with that, thank you everyone and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.